Thank you for joining me for another quick hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Mohan Ananda, Philip Tate, and Domenico Ciarallo. And I would like to talk about how can leaders bridge the disconnect between themselves and the people who are actually doing the work. Philip, can you kick us off, please?
Sure, I'd be glad to, Dr. Robyn. As a strategic communications pro myself, I would tell you that communication is the key to successfully building that bridge that you mentioned between leaders and the people that are actually doing the work. In my career, I've found that recognition and rewards and things like that go a whole lot further with folks and work a lot faster than discipline or shouting down people. I had the occasion a couple of years ago to work on a project with a client and do some videos with some leaders around the country. You may know the name David Novak. David is the former CEO of Yum Brands in Louisville, Kentucky, and he's long advocated for recognition as a real key strategy for bridging that gap between the C-suite and the rank and file. He's authored several books, including Taking People With You. I love that title. And a great one, A Little Story About the Awesome Power of Recognition. That's his latest book. David's a great guy, and in those books, he talks a lot about recognizing what others have done and finding ways to close what he calls the global recognition deficit. He believes recognition creates an energized workforce and inspires people to do great things. So I would say communication coupled with recognition would be one way that you could possibly bridge that gap.
Well, I absolutely 100% agree with Philip that communication is very, very important in all facets of life, especially in business. I also think that the big problem with a lot of companies, a lot of owners, and a lot of leaders is that they don't share the strategy or the objective of the company, the culture of the company properly with the people right down the line. And I think that's one important thing that leaders and CEOs and people that run companies need to share the strategy and their vision for the company so that everybody right down to their shipping clerk understands exactly what the meaning and the effort of the company is.
I agree with all these things. I can add something. Instead of just doing by words, telling others, I think you should be an example by deeds. You have to do what others are doing. There is no like hierarchy. You're a CEO, somebody is lower, but you have to put your hands on, you have to participate in it with them so that they look at you, not just as somebody at the top, somebody really involved in the work. At least that's my experience. I could say I've been pretty successful because of course, the first thing, you get the right people. You have to select the right people. That's very important. And then you have to show by what you're doing and they kind of work with you as a team. So that's my way to solve if there is a problem.
I think it's so great that you brought that point up because when I had a company, I had 10 employees at one time. I took out the garbage and I made the coffee, and my employees were aware of that they said, even the owner takes out the garbage and even the owner makes the coffee. And I actually even delivered orders when it was that important to get the client happy. So you're right. You have to lead by example, even doing the most menial tasks.
I've done something similar. In fact, I give importance to my employees or my people working with them because they have to feel they're part of the family or part of the ownership. And also one of the things in my area, we have what we call the stock options. And in fact, I've been proud to say I've created at least several hundred multimillionaires. So that kind of gives a feeling of it's not just you make money, that the whole team members are really beneficiary of. So they have an ownership interest, means they put much more than generally most employees do.
I like to tell a story back when I first started working when I was like 19 years old. I came home from work and I was super frustrated because the management had decided to change something. And I said to the person I was talking to, I said, they never asked the peon who knows. I'm the one who does this job. Why didn't they ask me? And it ended up being a complete disaster and they had to roll it back. And that's a story I like to tell executives is go ask the person who does the job. To your point, Mohan, sit next to them, do the job for a day. That's the best way that you're going to be able to bridge that gap. If you sit in your ivory tower, you're never going to really understand what's going on in the trenches.
I totally agree with you. I mean, another thing I do actually when people you have to give importance to their suggestions. That means if they come up with something, if you think, oh, yeah, I know everything, then it's a failure. You have to really recognize, because their creativity, innovation is really the growth of the company. It's not just you.
Yeah.
Robyn, from a skill standpoint, I mean, I think we've all spoken to this, but I mean, you've heard the old expression, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should listen twice as often. I think listening is a really underrated leadership skill. And with that kind of comes empathy. I mean, if you're listening, I think you not only appear empathetic, you are empathetic. I think that helps your self-awareness too. I think if you're listening to the rank and file or the person, to your point, who's doing that job, you'll have a lot better chance of finding the right solutions, recommending the right solutions, and building a team culture that everyone can be proud of.
I love that you brought that up, because another mistake that I've seen leaders make is that they bring in an organizational development team, usually a consultant of some kind. I've been on those teams. You do all kinds of surveys, you do interviews, you ask all these questions, and then they do nothing with it. And the people get burned out with sharing their ideas and sharing what the problems are and sharing how to fix it. If you never listen, don't ask. Don't bring in someone like me to ask questions and do interviews if you're going to ignore what you learn.
I liked a lot what you said, Philip, is a lot of times when we talk about leaders communicating, it's always from the top down. And it's not, like you said, from the bottom up listening. And communication goes both ways. And if you have a one-way communication system, you can preach all you want. But if you don't hear the things from the foot soldiers, like Robyn was saying, like you were saying, then you're never going to take anything out of it. It's got to be both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Exactly. In addition to that, in the technology area, we always have intellectual property issues will come, and people, those who come up with, they are the patent holder. Their name is there. So their applications, and also in many occasions, they are incentivized so that they have that, not only they get the credit for it, but there is also a financial benefit associated with that. That really makes it, so it has to be like a kind of a, not partnership, it's more like a family. Everybody is together to great. And that has helped, at least in my experience, to really build the company and make it very successful.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important that the white collar and the blue collar understand each other, in the sense that there's not a huge division between those two, because the employees are nothing without the ownership, and the ownership is nothing without the employees. And they have to realize that they have to coexist and they have to work together for the greater good of the company. I remember way back when we were doing promotions for the Canadian Hockey League, we were doing promotions for the future NHL hockey players. We shipped an order, thankfully, to Ottawa, and it was a 10-case order, only that the courier took 9. And then my client's calling me saying, we got 9 boxes. I go into shipping and I see this box sitting there. I said, yeah, no problem. I jumped in my car, I drove to Ottawa, and I made sure that the box was delivered. But my employees saw it and they couldn't believe that I was going to do that. And I said, listen, you got to do what you got to do to keep the clients happy. So they have to understand that you're willing to do even the most menial tasks to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. And do you guys have experience that this is not something that happens in most organizations, that most organizations have a gap and that hasn't been addressed?
That's a common practice. I've seen
so.
many places. Yes. There is always this, especially I come from India. I just want to distinguish the American culture versus the Indian culture. I mean, India has a very bureaucratic hierarchical system. For example, here, at least in my experience, whether it's a CEO or an average worker, we all sit together, have a cup of coffee and all. This is unheard of in India. The pecking order is so much. If somebody, a senior officer or any kind of senior person, everybody gets up. It's a kind of a showing respect. I mean, here there is nobody cares. So there is that difference, and especially from Indian culture, that's changing, by the way. The new technology companies are changing that.
Philip,
Robyn,
you were going to
I
say.
would close by saying, from a communication standpoint, if you fight for your employees, they'll fight for you. It's about building that trust up and down the communications chain in particular, and that'll help lead to success and bridging that gap.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge in this area. I really appreciate it. I think that many leaders could benefit from making a point to bridge the gap between themselves and their workers. And hopefully that this quick hits will help them do that. So thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you all again very soon.